medical student that will interview. So you might have 2, you might have 3 interviewers. It's important to shake hands, greet them. Best thing to wear to an interview is a smile, a positive attitude. Bring that with you. To introduce yourself. Establish eye contact. It's interesting when you have applicants and you're reading the interview evaluations where the applicant has stared at the floor for the entire time and looks up occasionally. Or they'll look at the ceiling and stare, maybe they're counting the holes in the ceiling, the little tiles or something like that, I don't know. But it's interesting, and sometimes we've noticed too that if you have 2 interviewers, engage in eye contact with each of them. Sometimes we've had applicants to look at one interviewer the entire time, and the other interviewer said, like, I might as well not even been in the room. They never looked at me, not even once. So just, it's that social awareness, what's appropriate for the situation, and being able to conduct yourself in a professional manner, and being able to respond to questions that they have. Now, you can't begin to anticipate all the questions they might ask you. That'd be impossible. But there are a few questions you just know that they're going to ask you. One being is, why do you want to be a doctor? Or why do you wish to pursue medicine? And those are the kinds of things that you should have thought about, and not in a canned speech approach, but at least be able to share in a way that comes alive, and you sort of get your juices flowing when you talk about medicine and about the experiences, rather than just listing chronologically, I did this, 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 and this, and there doesn't seem to be any emotion involved at all. They like to see not something that's fake or false, but something that just gets your juices flowing, and it gets their juices flowing in return, as to say that you are passionate about medicine. And so those are the kinds of things that when you come for your interviews, and is to look for. We try to have conversational interviews. We're not trying to screen you out of medical school. That's why we try to engage in conversation, asking you questions for you to be able to share things that maybe are not covered anywhere else in your application. It's your time to shine. And most students do extremely well in their interviews, and they enjoy it. But there are a few that it is difficult if they get off on the right foot, or if they have a few things that the blind spots. We had an applicant who, during the interview, he had a ballpoint pen, and during the entire time that he was interviewing, you know, and talking, he had the ballpoint pen, and he was doing this. When I asked him, he didn't get in, and so I counseled him. It wasn't for that reason solely, but there were other things. But I asked him, just in passing, you know, the interviewer said that you were clicking this ballpoint pen the entire time. And he looked at me astonished and said, I didn't even know I had a ballpoint pen in my hand. So there's sometimes, you know, I guess it's probably nervousness or whatever, but don't take a ballpoint pen with you to the interview. But just, you know, what a great time to be alive, to be applying to medical school. And I try to remind students when they're there that morning, because you know they're nervous, and you'd be inhuman if you weren't nervous to some extent. You've got to have a few butterflies in you. But after a while, after you're in the interview session, and after 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, you settle down and you begin talking about what your passion is and why you're pursuing medicine, then all those things just sort of go by the wayside, and I think you enjoy yourself. On occasion, there are a few people who never get over that nervousness, and that's why, you know, mock interviews, the more the better, and being able to address some of the issues. Maybe there are weaknesses in how you present yourself. Present yourself with confidence, not arrogance, but with confidence that this is what you want to do, to help convey and convince members of the admissions committee, those people also that are interviewing you, that this is what you want to do with your life. That's the personal attributes is so important before we even talk about MCAT and GPA. And that's why the things that you do outside the classroom that we've talked about that define you as a person are so important. That's why the types of things that you're doing as far as volunteerism and getting engaged in your community and other communities as well is so important. Membership is good, but leadership is better. Participation, rather than just having your name on a list of things that you've done, because you'll be able to use those kinds of experiences perhaps. There may be someone that you will meet in a volunteer experience that could really have a profound impact on you and further deepen your resolve to pursue medicine as a career, as a vocation, as a calling. So those are the kinds of things that you look for in every opportunity, not just your volunteering to check off on the list because it'll look good on your medical school application. It defines who you are because you want to help people. You want to be able to study and discipline yourself so that you can make good grades, certainly. But the bottom line of developing good study skills and study habits as you pursue any of the health professions is not so much as you're making a letter grade, an A or B or whatever, but eventually the ultimate goal is what have you learned that will help you someday to better diagnose and treat patients, to extend the number of years that they have to live, to improve the quality of the years that they have. Sometimes, as a physician, there's nothing else that can be done. Sometimes, it's just a matter of holding someone's hand and taking away the fear that they have. Dr. Richard Wheeler, who's the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at UAMS, says, a physician is like shining a bright light into a dark unknown. The fear of the unknown sometimes, that's one of the things that a physician does, maybe one of the most important things that a physician and that you can do for someone is to take away the fear of the unknown. Maybe there's something that you can no longer do, or medicine can no longer do for somebody, but you can share with them and take away some of the fear that they have. That's important. That talks about your ability as a person, your compassion, your spirit of altruism, the kinds of things that we like to see in Africans and demonstrated by the things you've invested your life in outside the classroom. Let me just quickly go over a couple of things here that touch base. Those are the pre-matriculation requirements. We talked about personal attributes, so they are so important. But the pre-matriculation requirements, there's a listing here of the courses that, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, that you'll need to certainly meet with your pre-med advisors and to go over and make sure that you get these courses, you have the program so that before you graduate, you'll have these courses. You can see the basic ones. And these are pretty common for just about every medical school. There's a few exceptions, and there's a new one this year and a new one starting for next year. The 2 semesters of biology, the 2 of chemistry, the 2 of organic chemistry. This year we've added the requirement of labs. For most students, that's not a big deal. They already have the labs, but the Academic Standards Committee decided to go ahead and include organic chemistry labs, beginning for those that are applying for 2012. The new one for those that are applying, not this year, but will be applying for 2013, is the 1 semester of genetics. And we find that most students have already pretty much planned to take genetics anyway, so this is not a big change. But for those students not affected for this coming year, 2012, but you must take it before you matriculate in 2013. The 2 semesters of math or calculus 1 will satisfy both the requirements of the math requirement. The 2 semesters of physics, the 2 semesters of English. The English, if you take one of the courses that you can substitute for an English course, there's a course in speech communications, which verbal communication certainly, as well as written communication, is extremely important. We do not accept online or correspondence courses or CLEP for the pre-matriculation requirements. Certainly it's fine, it's acceptable in your school for your major, for your degree, or whatever, but for the core courses for the College of Medicine, we cannot accept those if they are online. We can accept AP credit. We can accept AP credit provided that Arkansas Tech or your school gives you credit for that and it appears on your academic transcript. So sometimes students will be able to meet a math or an English AP credit and one of the pre-matriculation through an AP credit. Residency requirements, again, I don't know if there's any non-Arkansas residents, but to establish Arkansas residency, you have to live in the state in a non-student status for at least 6 months prior to the time of application. What that would mean, and what the Vice Chancellor has determined then, that is, let's say, for example, if you were going to apply for 2013, you would have to live in Arkansas in a non-student status at least by June 30th, 2012, and plan to continue to live there for the 6 months to December 31st. So that's how you could establish Arkansas residency if you were a non-Arkansas resident, but you can only do so in a non-student status. In the same way, if a student lived in Russellville but they went to school out of state, that doesn't change their residency. If the sole purpose of moving somewhere is to attend school, that doesn't change their residency. The same is true with the congressional district. If you were from Lake Village and you've come to Russellville, in other words, Polk County is not your county of residence, but it would be the county of where Lake Village is, or Paragould, or whatever, or another city in the state, maybe Queen or Dumas or whatever, Hamburg. So it's where you graduate from high school or you've lived prior to your time of coming into undergraduate school. There are some rules that impact the state. We're the only state that I know of, and talking to my colleagues across the country, that we have a state law that mandates that we have to have so many applicants that are accepted for admission from each of the 4 federal congressional districts. And so that only applies to the first 150 in our freshman class. There are 174, so of the first 150, I have to make sure as the Assistant Dean of Admissions is that we satisfy the law and that we have to have at least 27 from each of the 4 federal congressional